Welcome to the Tech Life podcast. In this episode, I managed to grab some time with Aria Carley from Microsoft. Most will know from Twitter as Aria Updated and her striving to ensure the world has the best experience possible when it comes to Windows updates. I also gained insights into what she's learning outside of tech at the moment and what drives her. I hope you enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications for upcoming episodes, and drop a like or comment. Morning, Aria.
Good morning.
Lovely to actually get the time. You're a person that is in demand today. Seen some of your sessions, they were absolutely mind-blowing. Your presentation style, absolutely on point. Some very unique styles as well. If people haven't seen it, you did a session online around, and we'll talk around some of the tech and bits and pieces, the Windows Update policies, where you was writing on boards and stuff.
Yes, backwards.
Backwards. That was rather impressive. So for those that don't know you, and I think everyone at the MMS conference is very aware of who you are now, but for those that don't, do you want to just introduce yourself, where you're from, what type of tech and areas that you are actually focusing on?
Yeah, for sure. So hi, I'm Aria. I work at Microsoft on Windows updates, specifically Windows Update Management. So Windows Update for Business, the Windows Insider Program for Business, and Windows Server Update Service. So anything to do with helping a bunch of IT admins manage the devices in their org.
Brilliant. So Windows Update, always a hot topic, both a love and a hate relationship for I think just about every admin on the planet. So with some of the bits that we've been seeing that you're bringing through, things like the Windows Update Deployment Service, and specifically the actual proper real world advice around some of the settings like you've just been doing with Ben, what is your kind of aim and goal to make admins' lives easier around the Windows updates?
Yeah, so I will say for myself, it's pretty much just listening to all of you and talking to you and saying, what makes you scream the most? And then get a lot of complaints and filter that down to the things that matter the most. And so I know one of the big things this last year was, what really small changes can we make to make it clearer of what you should be setting and shouldn't be setting, and provide that documentation, the cleaned up GPA, DMX, ADML, and more guidance. And that was like super small changes. Like I coded part of it myself, which no one wants me to code anything. And so super excited about that. But then also bigger changes, like giving you the control you need to move to the cloud, giving you the support you need to actually have things work and have an easier management time, rather than having to go and scream at your screen every time it's Patch Tuesday.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because it's not always the big, huge changes that come through and take ages to deliver that make the difference.
Yeah.
Them little individual tweaks, like say the best practice recommendations, listening to people's feedbacks. How have you felt that's been received as you've started to dish that advice out?
Yeah, so it really depends. So like I've gotten to work on some projects that took years to build, literally. We're really excited. We've announced that Configuration Manager will be able to leverage the native user experience, including active hours and storage reserve and all of these other really native parts that have been the best part of Windows Update for Business, and a UI that looks new, not from the 90s or 80s. And that took 2 years, because that's making an API public, and helping Configuration Manager integrate. Versus other things that have been really small tweaks, like stuff that, like intelligent active hours, or providing the guidance, or things like that. Or even just some customer has a bug and they're like, this is popping the notification at the wrong time. Or commercial attribution, adding the company name to the Windows Update notifications. That's actually a really, really tiny change, because we'd already built it all with the API. But that change, bringing that to Windows Update for Business, those small changes have huge impact too. And there's stuff that you wouldn't know if I didn't get to talk to people like you, who are like, this shit's broken. Sorry, this stuff's broken.
No, don't worry about the language.
So it's really, I don't know, I feel like it's been well received. I also think that, honestly, just I love being here, and I love actually having a Twitter now and things like that, because I get to interact with IT admins, and I talk to at least 2 or 3 people who are using the stuff I build on a weekly basis, if not more, and that enables me to build a better product, whether it's documentation, which still could use some work, or actual products.
Yeah, so that's an interesting couple of points I just picked up on there. So one, you mentioned that really small well, it sounds like a small change about putting things like the company name and stuff into notifications. That really does go a long way for both the, it's not a security factor, but the comfortability factor for an end user to say, I'm getting this pop-up that says I have to do something, but I can relate to it, it looks like it's from my company, it's a lot easier for them to digest it rather than something. So a small change, big impact. And then you also mentioned a couple of things on that score as well. Obviously there's lots of changes that are coming in, lots of information you're pumping out there. So a question on that one that I'd ask is just, obviously everyone has their own learning styles, keeping up with the information, and this also links into potentially something that you mentioned there around the Twitter side of it, but how do you both keep on top of new information coming in, digest it, and sort out the noise from what you need to learn?
Yeah, so I will say I've not perfected this skill.
If anyone has, point them in my direction.
I know.
I'd love to
really,
know.
I would too. Like, just teach me how. So for me, what I do is I'm a big handwriting person. Like, I'll take notes in every meeting. I love whiteboards. But so I have a list of, every time I talk to a customer, I've got a notebook, I'll write down notes. Or even on my phone, actually, after the last call, or not call, we're in person now, at the last talk, I had 2 people give me things that I wanted to follow up on. And so I take notes on all of that. And for me, the list is less about what needs to be fixed and what doesn't, because all of it's a pain point. So initially it's a feedback, right? The top of the funnel is that's pain point. The next part is I work with a lot of really fabulous people, both in and out of the company, and I don't need to find all the information. I don't need to fix every problem. I need to know who can fix the problem.
Right.
And so it's, oh, what is this is actually me, and what of this is saying to someone else and saying, here's why this matters. Here's what the customer said. Can you please go look at it? And then the next part is for stuff that is me. Okay, I want to get more information here. Like, what other customers are facing this? Is this just a one customer thing, or is it many? And that's where you use things like Twitter or customer calls or things like that to say, okay, am I seeing this more? And I look at data and say, okay, how many people are really setting it and have this configuration? And then from there, it's how big of an impact is it? And I will say, for Windows Update, there's so much that needs improvement, and so many different opinions of what needs to be improved. And so, like, it's both of those. It's understanding the root why, the importance of the root why, and then understanding, is there a solution that can meet multiple whys, or that needs to happen first?
In terms of, obviously, that's great for when you're taking the feedback and learning the routes to go and all the rest of it. And feedback into Microsoft has always been an interesting piece, and it's changed so much over these last few years. I know you did a session with DJAM the other day on the best way to, actually to get your support tickets fixed, but the same sorts of principles apply with talking to people like yourself, using the channels like Twitter, etc. And Microsoft have various feedback portals. But I think the biggest thing that I keep on hearing, especially through these conferences the last few days, is that Microsoft do actively listen. It's not just a shouting to a vacuum anymore. You guys understand that we're the ones suffering the pain, and you can potentially do something about it. But in terms of then when it comes to looking at the things that you have to either then affect, if you did say earlier, you don't ask you to code anything, but just generally when it comes to either understanding some of the underlying tech, or even something as random as you need to go and fix a sink and you've got a bus pipe, how do you consume information in that to then increase your knowledge?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started at Microsoft, I had never done coding. I'd never taken, I think I took one coding class. And so my extent of coding was like some if statements or some Python calling some class libraries, and that was it. And so for me, there was this huge learning curve of what are the developers saying? Even like what is a server? Like, it's not someone at a restaurant that walks around, so like, what are they talking about? And there was a huge amount of filtering information there, right? Or even things like 2 years ago, what's an API? And how does it work? And so, for me, there's a level of information you need to know. And I found different learning styles are different for everybody. So for me, one of the 2 best ways is, the first, was just getting my hands on reading as much as humanly possible.
Okay.
And I love reading. So for me, that was the first step. The second was, there's a lot of really smart people who've already learned all of this and can probably summarize it. And initially that starts with summarize the stuff you need to know.
Yeah.
So going to my developers, and there's actually one developer on my team, and he's been there since I started, which was a while ago. And he and I remember when I first met him, I was like, you are so smart. Oh my God. And you're so good at like explaining stuff. Like he would write down stuff and it would just be like brilliant. And so I remember I had just gotten there and it was maybe 2 months in, and I was like, can we be friends? And can I book a 2-hour block on your calendar? Okay. And so what I did was I booked 2 hours with him, and this is a principal developer who clearly is like, why is this person talking to me? But he did it, and he sat with me, and he, on a whiteboard, we had 2 whiteboards on either side, and he walked through how Windows Update worked, end to end. And it wasn't in the coding form per se, but like it was in an architectural block diagram form, because he's the principal architect, so that's what they do. And this was very parsable, because I didn't need to know if there's a semicolon or not, but I knew how the architecture worked and how the pieces fit together. And so from there, I had an understanding of which parts I needed to learn better. Mm-hmm. But even to this day, the bigger picture of how the things connect is so important.
That's interesting, that, because like I say, everybody's learning style is different.
Yeah.
I'm never going to say, right, that's the approach everyone should take.
No.
However, I can relate to that myself. I class myself as a visual learner.
Yeah.
You show me something with some diagrams, you show me it and build it out in a workflow, and I understand the concepts and the flows and interconnected parts. You ask me just to go and read a wall of text or something, and I'll just generally get bored and turn off. So, obviously, taking in information, tech forms a heavy part of your working life.
Yeah.
Do you have anything specific, and again this varies with everyone, where at the end of the day you have to close your laptop and turn completely off? Do you have tech bleeding into your life? What do you do outside that is not directly work related, that just also piques your interest and keeps you going?
Yeah, so lately, I will say, so my work schedule is weird. I don't work normal hours. I don't really believe in, I'm very, very lucky in the fact that a 9 to 5 would kill me.
Yeah.
Mostly because I have extreme attention problems and would be bored out of my mind. So I really like that I'm very flexible with my work life. But that also enables me to do some things outside of it, whether that's exploring, or I learned how to ride a bike 2 weeks ago. Oh, I know, I should have learned before that, but I didn't.
Still life goals ticked off.
Question. But I learned how to ride a bike, and I'm still learning, but I can now bike 2 hours. I'm not in shape enough to bike 2 hours, but I've done it. It hurt really bad, but I did it. I also am getting really into, I decided for fun to take some biology classes and some chemistry classes.
Okay.
So I signed up for some classes and I took them, and I just finished Inorganic Chemistry and Human Biology. And so I'm now doing some other various forms of organic chemistry and things like that. And so taking some fun classes that I never took in college because life sciences were something I thought.
That's interesting because, again, them topics, they're not like you're not doing a disservice to others, but most people will say, I want to learn a language or something like that. You've kind of gone in deep in the sciencey side of things, which is this just a general thirst for knowledge that you have?
So I will say I'm also learning a language, but mostly because I just moved to Copenhagen in Denmark.
Okay.
And I don't speak Danish. So I do have Duolingo on my phone, and there's free Danish lessons if you move to Denmark. And so I've started taking Danish lessons. I am terrible. I can talk to you badly, completely mispronounced, about a dog or you eating bread. And
as long as you get the basics down. Can I have a coffee?
Oh, I don't have that down. They speak English though, so like I don't know. But I don't know. I think it's just genuinely wanting to know more than I do now,
Mm.
but also we get so focused in on only certain areas, whether that's where we live or where we work or whatever. And I think we often will forget that there's other people in the world that have different problems than we do. And so, like, I feel like building that empathy comes in some ways from learning new things, whether that is a language and struggling to figure out how to say thank you, good day, without the person responding in English, here's your receipt.
Yeah.
Or whether that is looking at how does biology work and how does that really connect everyone. Or struggling through chemistry and being like, wow, maybe I should have started with general chemistry and not went straight to inorganic.
Yeah, maybe a slight jump there.
That one was just bad planning, I think, but
Interesting as well, though, because again, they are very left field to the world of tech. I say that they're still a science based, but you're coming in on something that you are not familiar with. Do you find that also then helps when you are talking either at conferences like this or just with customers, with, as you kind of mentioned a minute ago, breaking down that understanding of, hang on a second, just because I know it and understand it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else does? Does it help in how you reword stuff?
yeah, I think it helps in two ways. One, when I actually was interviewing for Microsoft to come, someone asked me a really, really, really good question. They asked, can you explain the seasons to me and how they work, as though I'm a kindergartner?
Okay.
And so, me being fascinating, got up and pretended to be the sun, and the sun was the table, and I pretended to be the earth, and tilting on my axis. And I totally looked up how seasons work afterwards. I was wrong. Like, I clearly didn't know how they worked, which, separate issue. But the explanation was good.
The approach to it.
The answer was wrong. But I think the question itself really intrigued me, because it's how do you explain things that we have a tendency to be like, oh, it's difficult, it's complicated. Very few things are so complicated that if you took the time and provided a structure on how to explain them, that you couldn't explain them to anybody. But we have this weird perception, or many people have this weird perception that I'm so smart, I know how it works.
Yeah.
I'm not smarter than anyone, and if I am doing my job right, can explain anything I know to anyone. And I think it helps learning these different things teach you that, because it teaches you, for example, certain concepts in inorganic chemistry I simply didn't get when the teacher explained it. I didn't get it. I was like, this is part of why I hate college, like it's terrible, it's really hard. And I was very frustrated. And then I went on different websites, watched some different YouTube videos, and someone explained it a different way. And I was like, I get it now. I understand how it works. And so that is just such a clear explanation of, I wasn't too dumb to get it. I just needed it explained the right way.
And I think that is a very key point. I've seen it in a couple of different sessions and stuff this week alone. If people do, and it's like going back to the whole Windows Update and deployment service and stuff, if people feel that put off by it, or they think, hang on a second, that's not how I currently do it, it's scary to transition to something else, go look at multiple different ways to explain it. Like I said, I find your explanations brilliant because they match my sort of learning style. I mentioned about the whole drawing on board, not that I'm ever going to try drawing backwards, but that worked for me. Whereas you go speak to somebody like Ben and stuff, they explain it slightly differently, that might work for them. So going and consuming different things is probably one of the best tips I've heard in a while, is adapt and find people that will suit your learning styles.
Exactly. Or ask someone to explain something twice. And I think that one of the biggest things is oftentimes we'll feel dumb if we have to ask them to repeat it in a different way. And I really wish, especially like women, didn't feel like it was okay to ask a question. Because I think that asking a question or asking someone to explain it differently is nothing about you being wrong.
No.
It's just, I need it differently. Which is where I think the second part of empathy comes in, is we're all just people. We're all just trying to live and survive and make money and feed our families and ideally have fun.
Absolutely.
Talking about updates.
I did a similar sort of session before where I gave an internal talk to the organisation where we were talking around there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I honestly, truly mean it. I mean, I might, especially with my sarcasm and humour at the best times, take the mickey quite significantly sometimes. But in the same vein, I would also rather people do ask, again, I didn't quite get that, do you mind explaining it? Because it shows that they are wanting to learn that topic. They're not just asking it for the sake of, well, I've asked a question, I can get away with it. If you demonstrate you want to learn something, I will quite happily help you over and over and over to get there. And so will most people. It shows an interest and you want to develop it.
What do you think stops people from actually going then and asking those questions?
So a lot of it that I tend to, well, my personal opinion is there's going to be obviously that personality trait. People are going to be shy, they don't want to. I've heard a lot of comments from people around today that they just get overwhelmed with what they have people on pedestals and all the rest of it. I don't want to approach that person, I daren't approach that person, they're my hero. Whereas when you break it down, we're just people at the end of the day. We don't buy, you can just talk to whoever you want. The second one again is, for me, sometimes people have a misconception that people will look down on them for just not knowing it. It's like, I know that, why don't you know it? And then you have that personal thing of, I don't want to feel stupid. This is why I say there's no such thing as a stupid question, it's just information you don't know. If that makes sense from my perspective, I don't know how you generally perceive people that don't want to ask questions.
That makes total sense. Like, I will say the weirdest part about coming to this conference was the number of people that walked up and were like, I follow you on Twitter. I'm like, cool.
Aria the Rockstar in the making.
Oh, I know. And I was like, I'm definitely not. Someone's like, you're famous. I'm like, I'm definitely not. Like, I literally fell out of bed yesterday. Not on purpose, just I didn't stand correctly.
Yeah, we're all just human.
We're all just human, and some of us less coordinated than others.
So a couple of last questions I've got for you, if you don't mind. You mentioned something previously when talking about taking that time to just go and book somebody's time. Now that for me is a brilliant idea. I tend to suffer a lot with lack of time throughout my day at the best of times. I have time in the future, and if somebody just comes and tries to grab 5 minutes, it will be, I want to explain more but I don't have the time, or it's an interruption to what I'm doing, and then it has a knock-on impact. So that whole going out and booking somebody's time, just saying, please can I have a dedicated amount of time, sounds brilliant. But then on the reverse side, if people wanted to do that with yourself, or just generally, and you mentioned you don't work the typical 9 to 5, or you couldn't stand to work the 9 to 5, how do you organise your work life? And potentially your personal life, just how do you find organising?
Yeah, so I've had a journey there. I will say in the beginning, I just took every meeting because I wanted to learn everything. That was terrible. I mean, initially it was fine because, like, initially you don't know anything, so no one wants to meet with you. You want to meet with them. But eventually your calendar just books up. And so I'd be in meetings constantly. And I do no work because I was in meetings constantly. And so my work-life balance was bad. So I think about a year, and I said, okay, I'm not taking any Friday meetings unless you are a VP and above. And no VP is going to contact me, so this is fine. So I post my Fridays. And so I just put busy. Because if I put oof, people will be like, where are you? No. I would just put busy on my calendar, because we use Outlook, because they pay us to. And so we put busy on it, and it was great. So I had my Fridays completely free. And then more I would go, still back-to-back meetings, and it's too much. And so I realized you have to prioritize, especially because I would have like 3 meetings at the same time you have to pick. And I realized, especially with moving to Denmark, I still work with a team in Redmond. And so now I'm working 5 to 10 p.m., which means I'm really only working meeting hours from 8 a.m. to noon or 1 p.m. in Redmond, which means I have 4 to 5 at most hours of meetings a day. And what's great about this is because I have to be very conscious of what meetings I'm taking, what meetings do I need to be at, and what. And so I ask myself typically a few questions. What am I contributing to this meeting? what am I going to get out of this meeting? And could someone else contribute the same?
Right.
And typically, if it's, I need to be at this meeting because I need to give a 5-minute update, great, I can email that 5-minute update. I do not need to be at that meeting. It's a waste of my time and it's a waste of theirs. If it's, I really need something from the meeting, obviously I need to go because I need something. And if it's someone else could answer these same questions, great. Hey, do you have time to go to the meeting? Great, forward. And so it really limits the amount of meetings that you have to be in. I also think that pushing people to really ask them why they need a meeting, not just an email, is something else. And then the last thing I would say is, I would give anyone who asks 30 minutes of my calendar. Like you asked, and I gave you 30 minutes of my calendar. So the key is putting it at a time that works for you.
Yes.
And so I have tons of people that I mentor, tons of people who mentor me, who they're like, hey, can I have 30 minutes? I'm like, of course. Let me schedule it for us, and I will put it. And my calendar, if you looked at it, has basically all of these holds. And so I have periods which I just block off. I'm not doing anything then. I just don't want to do a meeting unless you ask for a meeting then. And so this really helps me limit the amount of meetings that I have to be in. And gives me the time to actually go and relax or have fun or do my emails when I want to do my emails and be very conscious about it. Because otherwise, if you say yes to everything, you'll never have time to manage your team. You'll never have time to talk to customers. You'll never have time to actually live a life. And you will be sad.
So thank you, Aria. It's been marvellous to actually get some time with you. I appreciate you're very busy and there's going to be a ton of people that still want to call you for all these questions.
Anytime.
Just to summarise up that last bit, is there anything that you are either currently working on or future tech that's coming through that both really excites you and you'd really advise people to go and check out and look for, because it's going to potentially change either the way they work and make their life easier?
Yeah, so I'm super excited to see the configuration manager customers be able to leverage the native Windows Update experience. To me, that's just so fundamentally game-changing to go from having 2 orchestrators on the box that are both doing scans, downloads, installs, etc., to a single orchestrator with a single UX that's doing all updates for both Configuration Manager and Windows Update for Business. And so to me, that's going to be amazing, especially to just have that capability and be able to have that experience.
Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm sure everyone's going to call you for lots more WSOS questions.
Reach out anytime on Twitter. I appreciate all questions, feedback, or heckling. It doesn't matter either way.
Marvellous. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
In the next episode, we'll be talking to Justin Chalfant, ex-Microsoft employee, config manager and updates guru, founder of the amazing Patch My PC company, and general ice hockey fan. We'll be talking systems management, updates, learning styles, being introverted, and about dancing. I hope you enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications for upcoming episodes, and drop a like or comment.